Hello and welcome to another episode of The Scramble. I'm your host, Sarah Montes-de-Oca. Thank you for joining us. On today's episode, we will discuss a Republican-backed open letter to the leaders of Iran regarding American-Iranian nuclear negotiations. Next, the recent chapter closing and expulsion of members of the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity at the University of Oklahoma due to a video of its members singing a racist chant. Lastly, the Nevada State Assembly has introduced a bill that would make all Nevada police officers and correction officers wear body cameras. Joining us on our panel today, Dan Mikowski, a graduate student in journalism and media studies, Jonathan Doc Bradley, a doctoral candidate in political science, Hunter Terry, a UNLV alum, and Camelot Todd, a junior in journalism and media studies. Thanks for being here today. So, freshman Republican Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas wrote an open letter to the leaders of Iran warning them not to agree to any deal regarding uranium enrichment because the next administration can reverse it, quote, with the stroke of a pen. The letter, endorsed by a total of 47 GOP senators, appears to be merely educational. But will this letter interfere with negotiations with Iran? Did these senators violate the Logan Act by sending this letter, or is this an attempt by Republicans to discredit the president? Who wants to start?
Okay, so they actually did violate the Logan Act, but they probably won't be prosecuted because I think the last time it was prosecuted was 1806 or 1807.
What was the Logan Act?
The Logan Act, it was a, I can't remember.
It was an act passed by the Congress to prevent people other than the President of the United States making treaties or negotiating deals with foreign governments because foreign policy purview is almost strictly of the executive.
So unless appointed by the president, Tom Cotton, unfortunately, went behind his back and without having orders from the president.
I read the letter last night just to refresh myself with it, and just to get a clear view of what was said, to try and get past everything that's been in the media for the last week. And it's kind of petulant. It seems very immature. If it's educating, it's in a very demeaning and speaking down to people kind of way, which no one likes. I don't think it will necessarily affect negotiations because, judging from their response, I don't think that the Iranians took it seriously. I think that they probably laughed at those people and then felt bad that Obama had to deal with them. But unless negotiations do just fail of their own accord, in which case I think this letter will face some blame as to why it's our fault and not Iran's, at least from the Iranians. Other than that, I don't see this playing a big part.
There is an aspect to this, and that is an aspect of legitimacy of our government system. We're the worldwide bank, we're the worldwide police force. I mean, one of the reasons that we were able to get out of the crisis of 2008 is because people were willing to invest their money in us. When you have 47 senators, and this isn't 47 crazy Congress members from Boudunk, Kentucky, this is 47 members who are sworn to task to support the government of the United States of America, who step up and say, we do not place legitimacy in this president or the deals he makes. It's a very difficult task when you're going on the world stage. So even though not the Ayatollah, but the president of Iran said, yes, we have hardliners too, and they're a bunch of idiots, which was basically the same thing as saying these guys out here. Right. It's a larger statement, and this is almost indicative of the aspect of President Obama in that this is not our president. We do not serve under this president, and we do not see this president's authorization to make deals on our behalf. And that actually can have a negative effect on worldwide situations.
Doesn't that come, it certainly feels treasonous in the sense that it is, like, what is the intent? The intent is clearly to undermine the work of the president without even knowledge. So it's not like being a noble whistleblower who's trying to say, oh my gosh, he's about to, I'm here to save the country because he's about to sign away, all your rights in X, Y, and Z fashion. I mean, this clearly seems like pandering to a voter base and perhaps a donor base that really still gets so excited just about causing trouble for this president. And I think, we'll see how it plays out in this upcoming election cycle, but I think the GOP is going to have to pay a price for some of that because there are enough moderate Republicans out there who are willing to realize going, it's not cool. Like, there are negotiations that go on that all that information cannot be out in public. There are other factors that are going on. It's not just about a freshman senator establishing a certain, planting his flag essentially.
I would agree. It does seem to have little purpose other than just to undermine the president and just to play to that base. And looking at that letter, a big purpose seems to be that Tom Cotton wanted to have his signature on a document in big font,
2020.
on everyone's computer and on their TV screens. But that's really, I agree. I think that's all it does. And it seems it does stand out because until this issue came up, until this letter, not Iran, it's the one issue that Democrats, Republicans were pretty united on was, give the middle finger to Iran. They were all about backing Israel until, they went behind the president's back to invite Netanyahu to speak in front of Congress. And that already put a wedge there. And then this following that up, it's really politicized to make this a partisan issue. And it seems in the past that foreign policy was not supposed to be a super partisan issue. Partisanship was great and pumping your name up and getting elected, and it was all domestic, but it usually seemed to end at the coast.
Well, that's the term. The politics ends at the water's edge. That when you're dealing with foreign affairs, we work as a unified nation. And we've done this even through the Bush presidency, which had its tumultuous times. We still operated as a foreign nation. This is not the first time this has come up with this president, and I think it actually plays into what we're going to speak about later is this level of racism still in the country. There is a distinct, this is not our president. And that's what this really is. It's saying this person does not represent us, and I cannot help but say it is a personal attack on him.
I think I'm going to have to agree. I mean, you don't see too many Republicans doing this to any other political leader, but they've done this for almost 8 years. They've kind of tried to undermine him with their policies, with their rants. And if you look at Obama's policies, they're not extremely liberal. They're very moderate. He's a moderate Democrat. So it's more of an attack on him personally than it is.
It's certain to become clear. Now, that's what I think there's going to be a lot of GOPers that have to face this reality that their claims that the liberals are just blindly defending Obama, this tyrant, this guy who is so weak but yet so oppressive, that the fiction is starting to become clear to them here too. Who loves America in this scenario of Tom Cotton? Does Tom Cotton love himself, or does he love America here? Did he do it the best way? And when you start to see these realities, then that's where it becomes clear over 8 years that it started out with "you lie," and then it was the Arizona governor's finger in this. I mean, it's like as if this president has to work twice as hard to get half the results. Yeah. That's what America is having to deal with right now.
I believe the proper term is a black tax. I think that's the actual definition of what a black tax is. You've got to work harder, basically because of your skin color. And Cotton's a racist. I'm gonna say it. That's a strong statement. Let me pull that back.
Go ahead, Kamala. You can end on your note.
Scandal is a great show. I like it. And one of the lines is she has to work twice as hard to get half of the praise. And I think it definitely applies to this president. He has to work twice as hard, has to do everything with his policies twice as good as any other president just to get half the praise.
I agree. I think it all stems, it follows the path from that very first "you lied" State of the Union. And it's been a trend that we've seen over and over again. And as much as they try to deny it, it was just 2 weeks ago that Rudy Giuliani told us how President Obama doesn't love America, at least not like we do, not like us real Americans. And it's about treating him as the other, treating him as he's not like us. And they don't see him, despite being elected twice as president, despite him, wielding the authority, they don't see it as being legitimate because they don't respect him. And it's hard to find another reason besides he's black.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens to Tom Cotton. Continuing on, the charter of the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity at the University of Oklahoma has been revoked by their national organization, and 2 members have been expelled from the school after a video showing members of the fraternity chanting racist slurs. The spokesman for SAE nationally stated that all of the students in SAE that participated would be formally expelled from the fraternity. One of the students in the video stated that he was taught the song, suggesting institutionalized racism. Has SAE taken enough action against its members? And what measures should universities take against incidents like this? Is racism quietly continuing in society?
I will be the first to speak. This probably influenced my previous answer. I grew up in Oklahoma. I went to high school in Oklahoma and know the climate. And not just Oklahoma, but I've lived predominantly through the South. this idea of institutional racism, before we get into whether the chapter acted right or the college acted right, permeates throughout the system. This young man who apologized said, you know, I knew this was wrong. I knew that this was, well, evidently you did know it was wrong because you sang it on the bus and you thought it was fine. And to say, well, I'm not racist. I've known so many people in that climate who would never ever claim to have any racist attitudes whatsoever, but to be involved in a racist culture that you would just say, well, this is just the norm. And that is Oklahoma, it's Arkansas, it's North Carolina, it's places that I've lived. SAE was right to say this chapter's done and needs to do a full evaluation. Props to President Bourne of OU who said, that's it, you guys are done, you're off campus. The difficulty though in removing these kids from campus and saying we're expelling you because we don't want you here would probably be better to say, no, you need to stay here and you need to take these sensitivity classes, you need to understand this. Because basically what you're saying is we're kicking these people out because they visibly did something wrong, rather than attempting to change the culture, rather than we want to keep you here in order to re-educate you, educate as an institution, and to bring this about. But it's indicative, from what we were previously talking about, to deny that there is not institutional racism. In Oklahoma, we could say that's a southern state. To say that it doesn't exist throughout the nation would be blind. And to say this is a minor incident is, again, blind as well.
Well, now they're going toward the university as well to see, since they were expelled, was it necessary? I mean, they were speaking publicly. What are the steps really that needed to be taken? Hunter, what do you think?
Well, to start, I also from the South. I was born and raised in Virginia. My family's from Kentucky and Tennessee and Texas. And I think in the original question it asked if racism was quietly still running along. I don't think it's all that quiet. I mean, you see the Department of Justice report just came out about Ferguson, and the freedom with which people think it's okay to speak racistly and tell extremely offensive racist jokes. And these kids, I mean, they know they're in a bus full of their peers, and they thought it was okay. Not to say they didn't know it was wrong. I'm sure they knew it was wrong. People know a lot of things wrong. People still steal. People still, get in fights and beat people up. People do things that are wrong. And I think that before President Obama, even if in 2004 you'd asked me, are we to a point where we can have a black president? Even after hearing his speech for Kerry's nomination, I would have been very skeptical. But we did, and it's impressive. And I think that racism, it's further from prominence than you would feel if you watch the news. But like every other small group, the craziest people are the loudest. And I think that with the progress we've made, with having our first black president, they see their old way of life threatened. And I hope that this is, this new wave of racism that seems to be bouncing back. I hope it's the death toll.
Wait, you say the craziest people. These young kids were the leaders of the university. These weren't the craziest people. These were the future leaders of Oklahoma.
I just meant in general.
Okay, yeah.
Don't forget this situation transcends this specific situation. Not only does SAE have a history of where they specifically did ban African American membership until universities said we're going to start kicking houses off campus that have racist policies. They changed their rules. They also had at the University of Texas a similar chant. A similar chant was that suggested that it was not just sort of somebody just kind of came up with this on the bus. Mm-hmm. And there also was an incident, I forget which university it was out of, but where they had a black pledge who died because of abusive hazing. And so, you have to say that SAE is in the clear it seems like they've got a long ways to go. You can understand why they're taking the actions that they're taking, because they're trying to save the life of their fraternity, not just at the University of Oklahoma, but nationwide. And I think that's what we're starting to see here, is the entire fraternity system now is facing the reality of, hey, what's in what skeletons do you have in your closet here? Because that's what they're it's all becoming clear. People are looking at it here now, and so this is going to go well beyond what took place on that bus.
Well, and now the attacks that are going also toward these students, that were expelled. I know that questions are being raised about that.
What do you mean, like their identity?
Their identities, their threats that they have received, death threats that even the family of the one student had moved out of their home.
As one of the youngest members here, sorry guys. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and it was a West Coast kind of gal, and we were all very integrated, and it comes from, seeing people. I was talking to a black student here on campus about this, and he said, a lot of racism stems from the fact that you don't know someone. You're not willing to sit down at the table and talk to them and see them as an equal. And I think a lot of it has to do with people in the South. They don't want to branch out and reach out to people that aren't like them.
If I can build onto that, as far as an institutional aspect of it, I graduated from the University of Arkansas in 2001, North Carolina State in 2005. One of the things I love about teaching here is when I look at my class, it is diversified. I mean, there's UNLV, the diversification of UNLV is fantastic. At Arkansas, everyone looked like me. And at North Carolina, almost everyone looked like me. And there does not seem to be a great move to create levels of diversity. Oklahoma University is the premier educational institution, but if you go look at the actual demographics of that, it's not very diversified, not according to the state discipline. So yeah, absolutely on what you say. It's not even just individuals, it's institutions not really working to create a level of diversity.
You know, one of the things you're seeing in this situation too, I really think that you're seeing this nationwide. A key problem right now is non-racist racism. And there are a whole group of people out there that, because they're not out there going to Klan rallies and they're not dropping racial slurs left and right, they just assume, oh, we're not racist. We're just we can't explain why we haven't hired any black people. We can't explain why we made this comment that sounded when you look at what Donald Sterling said. He didn't drop, the LA Clippers guy. He didn't drop any racial slurs. Like if it was racial slurs that were what was the problem in the NBA, well then you would have to kick out like half the players, because I'm sure they've used that language. But it was these racist ideas that were conveyed by people who genuinely believe they're not racist. And that's the reality that this bus is making us realize, is like, these non-racists are more racist than you think. And, get them drunk on a bus and put them with their peers. And I mean, it's amazing that someone, even in that environment, didn't think like,
This is wrong.
yeah, a date didn't like break up with somebody, because I just can't be with people who do that kind of stuff.
We'll see how this story continues to unfold. Moving on to our next topic. In a pilot program designed by a UNLV professor, 400 Las Vegas police officers have been issued body cameras. The state assembly introduced a new bill to make all police and correction officers in Nevada wear these cameras. This measure would cost an estimated $9.2 million for the first year and annually cost $6.6 million. Officers have the ability to turn these cameras off or choose not to wear them, such as a police detective or an undercover officer. Will this measure help decrease unlawful use of force incidents, and is it worth the financial costs?
I think, facially, it's worth the cost. I think it should help reduce incidents. It should improve the regulatory system on police. I found the most interesting part of this, is when you start talking about the ACLU's issue with these, is although it's great when you're out in the street, when the police are first coming on a suspect, but the issues with privacy. And what if someone goes into someone's home? They turn that back off, but now if they turn that video camera off, if there's a big issue now, how do you contest that? And I think that those will be some interesting points to follow.
I'm more interested in seeing how this study goes, because it's only a year into the program, so there's another year. And I'm interested because they did a study in Denver, and it showed that most of these police officers, because they had the choice to turn it off or not wear it, they didn't wear it, and that it wasn't being used effectively. So before we put down millions of dollars into a program, I want to see how it's going to be used effectively and what policies they're going to put in place to make sure it is.
The actual stats from that Denver study were that in 75% of use of force incidents that the police chose to, I'm not going to have my camera on in this time. But at the same time, like the adoption of this, to me, seems inevitable, because they are too effective. The perception of gosh, we're not going to have any Michael Browns anymore. We're not going to have that without a police officer being able to be prosecuted. And police officers are okay with this too, because they found there's a study out of, it's called the Rialto study out of California, that kind of set up a model that the Las Vegas study is following. They found that use of force or claims of abuse by police were reduced by 90%, because the perception that the camera is watching them. And they found so far in Las Vegas, they've had 21 use of force use of force incidents or claims of abuse. I forget the exact wording of it, but 20 of them have been dismissed as like, yep, the police officer didn't do anything wrong. But you gotta be careful where this is going, because right now who is driving these bills, notice they're talking about the money to be spent on the cameras. It's the camera makers. The Rialto study, which is setting the precedents for these subsequent studies, it's the people that are selling surveillance cameras. So of course they want every police officer in the world. So as much as we're getting protection, we just have to be aware that these are the infrastructure. We're setting up the infrastructure for a surveillance society.
And given the corruption, particularly in Las Vegas with police officers, should they even have the ability to turn them off, or should they be required?
See, I don't know if they should have the ability to turn them off unless they are undercover or a detective. I have an uncle who works for the police department here as an undercover detective for child prostitution. So I don't think you should have a body camera on for that specific incident, especially if you're walking in and you're. I just don't think.
That's what it has to. Right now, it's being thought about in the sense of buying cameras, but there are so many incidents about the ACLU's quandary about privacy, and if you think of just the police work itself, they have to have some ability. If they're recording 24/7, then think about it. They're not going to get any tips anymore. Are you going to get the witness who, hey, did you see something? If you're recording me, I definitely didn't see anything.
Not money.
No, I mean tips.
I love the Las Vegas Police Department.
That's a whole income stream that's being cut out there, But so it definitely just changes policing. That it definitely merits a lot more study to think about how these ramifications.
We're not having these arguments about dashboard cams, and dashboard cams have been seen to be rather universally well accepted, even though when they started, there were confusions and questions about it. As far as the cost and the benefit of this, how much is it going to offset on actual lawsuits and other situations like that? But then the simple fact of the matter is we have so many issues coming up now where we're losing, again, and I go back to this all the time, our trust in our own police force. And our trust in our police is rather essential to our society. And when we can't even trust this most basic level of protection and security and safety, it's a detriment to our society. So if it takes something like cameras, and I understand there's an ACLU aspect of it, and it would have to be controlled information, and the officers would probably not need to have a control. All these need to be ironed out at time. But the key element is if something like this can help us establish trust without destroying the fabric we've already done, then it might be necessary no matter what the cost.
Well, a police state is a very safe place. If you.
Well, but see, this is policing the police, and that's one of the issues that we're having now with our trust is we're distrusting our police.
See, I feel like there's ways in which a community can work with the police to better connect and trust the police besides putting cameras on them. I feel like if we had police who were had more in-depth sensitivity training, if the minorities related more with the police and there were more minorities on the police department, we wouldn't have such tensions.
What about the argument that these are useful for protecting the police? And that's one of my big proponents of it, is they protect the police probably more so than any other person.
Both
Yeah,
sides.
That's what they're finding that results.
Yeah.
Both sides are.
I'm fond of it. I'm just hesitant towards having everyone wear a camera, and it just.
And every situation's different, so.
I want more information.
Well, I think that the rules obviously need to be fleshed out. You don't want to have cameras on people who are undercover. That should be obvious. And as far as someone who's going to tip, they should have the opportunity to turn them off to protect a witness's identity, to try and get closer to people and speak personally, not necessarily being on the record. As journalists in journalism school, we know about that. You don't just because you get information, you can promise someone they'll be anonymous. You do allow that kind of thing. I also think that the idea this is going to be a cure-all, that it may not be. You look at the Eric Garner case in New York, and that was all on film, and it looked like there was no doubt that at the very least police negligence led to this man's death, and there was still nothing done in the after the inquest. There was no charges filed. There was nothing going on there to see this done. Now, perhaps that was because they were looking for a first-degree murder charge, because everyone always wants to swing for the fence, and that was not going to be proved. But there was enough evidence there that something should have happened, and it didn't.
But doesn't this tie into our previous commentary on the situation in OU? We knew that everybody's talking about the video, but we knew that stuff existed before that. But the video actually was video's worth 10,000 words now. So
Rodney King.
And the idea of the police not wearing these cameras when everybody has a camera, that everything is recorded now. if nothing else, it's giving them the ability maybe even to shape the narrative or control the narrative or protect themselves. Because I'm surprised that what happened in Ferguson was not recorded. How was it not? How everybody has a camera.
That's one of the things that one of the potential regulations that they have to look at, and this is some of what the UNLV backed study is trying to establish. These sorts of questions to ask is who has rights to that recording. Does a police officer have a right to access his own video recording to write up a police report? Well, yeah, it's facts, it's information that could be helpful, but then now that officer is starting to shape a story, and is that what you want? And not to get too science fictiony, but let's think about how we're writing these rules, because what other kind of information are they going to be able to sense? Are they going to be, their heat detectors, other different types of sensors that can collect data? Like, do we want to put them on cops? And then who are cops? We already know that dogs are named actual police officers. New robots and drones are being named actual police officers. So do they have the same rights with their cameras that officers do? And all these questions, I mean, they'll all have to be answered over the next decades.
We'll really see how this story continues to unfold and how this study really, what it supports. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Share your opinions and any ideas or topics you would like us to scramble about to thescramble.unlv@gmail.com. You can also catch full episodes of The Scramble at UNLV-TV. From all of us here at The Scramble, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.